and she had diabetes and arterial sclerosis, and so she just stayed home. She couldn't go anywhere. So us kids, helped take care of her, when we were all growing up. So that's when I had to come home from Thailand. She was 60 years old when she passed away back in 1974. So, but my dad lived to be 91, and he didn't pass away until 1996. And so while I was working out at the Cape, I met after my wife passed away. We went up to my daughter's house in the Panhandle, and I happened to meet my present wife. She was my daughter's next door neighbor, and we got along really good. And so we started seeing each other, and she's the one that introduced me to the Lord.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah.
So she moved down here with me and my kids, and she was a regular. She went to church regularly, but I didn't. So we went and more or less church shopped, so to speak. And then I found one day we were going back from shopping, and I saw this one church, and I said, "Hey, let's go stop there and go to that one on Sunday." So that was First United Methodist Church in Cocoa. So we went there, and I just fell in love with the pastor. He was so amicable, down to earth. He wasn't stuffy at all. And I said, "Wow, I should have started going to church a lot sooner." But I guess he was the catalyst, and I got saved when going to the church with him, and I've been going there for like 8 or 9 years now, and I'm still at that church, and I work up in the audio video booth now, so I enjoy doing that so much. I mean, it's before I started doing that, since I worked in television operations at where I work, I looked back in the booth. I was sitting, with the congregation, and I looked back in the booth, or up in the booth. I said, "I wonder how I can get a job up there." And all of the guys that were up there then, they were all in their 80s. I said, the only way I'm going to get up there is through attrition. So my pastor came to me one day, and I asked him, "How do you get a job up there in the booth?" He said, "You want a job up there?" I said, "Yeah, that would be awesome." So he said, "Okay." He said, "You got a job up there if you want it." And I've been up there ever since.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so
go
ahead.
When you look back over your life and you see the things that, you've been through even as a child, and what is one of the things that stood out to you that you still carry now in your adulthood?
I still carry with me my dad. His the way he looked at things, he was passive, but he was one of the most loving people that I've ever known, and that stuck with me. And he always tried to do everything, do it the right way the first time, And I've always tried to do that myself, so following in his footsteps. And he was a great joke teller, but there's too many of them to go on here. I remember one time there was the 11 o'clock news came on, and there was a story about somebody broke into somebody's house up in Cleveland, which is about 50 miles away from where we live.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking, hey, we don't lock our doors. I better go ask my dad, why do we don't lock our doors? So next day when he came home from work, I said, Dad, we don't lock our doors at night. How's come? I says, I saw, a news story about somebody broke in, to that house up in Cleveland. Don't you think they'll start coming down this way? He said, well, I'll tell you. He says, somebody tried to break into our house. They'd walk in the door. They'd look around and feel sorry for us and want to leave us something. So I said, okay.
When you said that reminded me of my childhood too, growing up. Yeah. Because that is exactly how we lived. We lived with our doors open. We slept with our doors open all day long. Yeah.
The only time we closed our doors was to keep the mosquitoes out.
Yeah. You said you have a saying that you carry along with you, and it talks about being true to yourself, and share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was doing some reading one time. One day, and I came across this book. His name escapes me right now. But the saying that he said was, "Be yourself. Everybody else is always already taken." Oscar Wilde is who it was that said that, and I thought that was so prophetic. I said, "Wow, yeah." I mean, don't try to be somebody you're not, because if you try to be somebody you're not, people are just going to see straight through that, and you're only hurting yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's what I try to do. And let's see. When I was growing up, also, I pretty much had the run of the city. I mean, there was only 20,000 people in our city, more or less a town. But I never tried to get in trouble. I knew what was wrong, and I stayed away from trouble. But, I went around with my friends and stuff like that. And the most excitement we did was we would, on Saturday, we would mow a couple of lawns. And then we would go over to the pizza place and buy a quart of soda. And we would sit there on somebody's bank, and we would eat the whole pizza and drink a whole bottle of soda. We were so stuffed.
Oh my gosh, times has changed so much.
Yeah.
What you would like? Is there anything else that you would like to say to some of our listeners who's listening today? Whether it's family values or anything that will encourage them to.
I would say there's a little voice that you may hear inside of you. Listen to that voice. It's God. It's the Holy Spirit. You should pay attention to it because they're never wrong, and they'll never steer you in the wrong path. Mm-hmm. So I think about that, quite often, and I don't I don't like not thinking about that. So
Is that a way that you maintain your peace and your direction and your purpose in life?
Yeah, I'm even with all the military and stuff like that, being security police and that helps me stay grounded. So I was never in combat or anything. I almost was one time. When I was in Thailand, we had some communist Thais try to get over our fence, and we had to set up a 25-man blocking force. Mm-hmm. And if they would have climbed over the fence, we had orders to take them out, mm-hmm. because they were carrying explosive charges. They were trying to get in to the base to blow up our B-52s. Mm. So, and like I said, this was back in 1974. So that was the tail end of the Vietnam War. And the B-52s that we had there were the ones that came back from a run, a flight over in Vietnam. So we had to protect our assets. Thankfully, we didn't have to shoot anybody. Mm. We sent some illumination flares up, and they saw them, and I don't think they saw us, but they got scared, and they took off. So.
Yeah, I had the stuff. That's what it was.
Yep. So we were ready. We were ready to engage if we had to, but I'm glad we didn't.
Jim, you had a very interesting life, not only childhood and upbringing, mm-hmm. and definitely you seem to be a very strong man of faith and family man as that. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you regret not doing or not accomplishing?
I should have started going to church a lot sooner. But I did when I was in basic training, and that was partly because that was our only freedom, on the weekends. Mm-hmm. But I shouldn't have also listened to myself, because when right after my first marriage, we started going to church once in a while. And every church that I went to at the time, the pastors would say, well, you should do this because this religion, they don't do that right. We do it right, but they don't do it right. And then the second thing was, we want money. We want money. We want money. So is that all they talk about? Is running the other religions down, and want money? So that kind of shied me away for a while.
Discouraged you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It happens.
So,
especially when you're.
And I was in my 20s too.
Young, starting out. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So now I think a lot differently. I'm glad I have the Lord on my side.
Yes, sir. You sound to be a very wise man.
Well, I try to stay out of trouble.
Hey, that's a plus nowadays.
Yeah. So, yep. I can't think of anything else that stands out other than I have 3 wonderful daughters. And my oldest one is 50. She lives in the next town over.
Jim, we got to bring you back again. You have so much that you would like to share, and we want to listen to you, but we're in closing.
Oh, okay.
You have listened to Jim, and you've also tuned in to Live with Necee. I'm your host, Opal Bailey. God bless you.
Thanks for having me.